My name is Alex. I'm 29. And if you asked anyone in my family, they'd probably describe me as the quiet one, or worse, the one who never quite figured it out. I've always been low maintenance, never asked for much. I wasn't the golden child. That title belonged to my older brother, Nathan, who followed dad into finance, or my younger sister, Rachel, who's practically a professional social butterfly with a Pinterest-perfect life. Me? I went my own way. Built a quiet career in software, mostly remote work, decent pay, and I never bragged about it. I liked living under the radar. But what I didn't realize was that my family didn't just ignore me, they saw me as some kind of joke. It started the way it always does, a text from mom in the family group chat. Birthday dinner for Alex this Friday. Any suggestions? That part was fine. I even felt a little hopeful. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe they'd remember I don't eat meat, or that I'd mentioned a new place that opened downtown. But then the replies started. Nathan, let's not go fancy. Save the good places for real accomplishments. Rachel chimed in with, LOL true. Buffet. And mom? She just reacted to both messages with a thumbs up. No one asked what I wanted. No one asked if I had plans. Just like every year, they made the decision, and I went along with it. So Friday rolls around. I show up at this sad little buffet, dim lighting, sticky tables, the kind of place where the sneeze guard is older than most of the staff. Everyone's already seated, halfway through their plates. No decorations. No cake. Just a half-hearted, hey, birthday boy, from my Uncle Frank between bites of lukewarm mac and cheese. I smiled, nodded, sat down, and tried not to take it personally. I've gotten used to fading into the background. But then came the card. It was in a plain white envelope, no handwriting on the front. Inside, a generic, happy birthday message printed in cursive, and someone had scribbled in blue pen underneath. Maybe next year you'll do something worth celebrating. I stared at it. For a second, I thought it was a joke. But the way Nathan laughed, the way Rachel sipped her soda and said, just a little motivation, and the way mom smiled like it was all so clever, it wasn't a joke. It was how they really saw me, as the one who never quite measured up. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, pulled out my phone, and took a quick photo of the card on the table, the cheap buffet plates in the background, my family all mid-laugh. Then I stood up, placed the card back down, and said, thanks for dinner. No sarcasm. No anger. Just calm. I walked out before anyone could reply. The silence that followed was probably the loudest moment of the night. No one came after me. No one texted. I sat in my car, the photo still on my phone screen, and just stared at it for a long time. Something in me shifted that night. I wasn't angry, not really. I was done. Done being the silent one. Done being their scapegoat for every unspoken tension in the family. I'd spent the last 3 years building something they didn't know about. Freelance contracts, licensing deals, a quiet side project that had taken off behind the scenes. I hadn't told them because I didn't need their validation. But now, I realized I didn't want their presence either. 3 days later, the group chat lit up like a Christmas tree. It started with Rachel. Did anyone else just lose access to Netflix? Then Nathan, and HBO, and Spotify. What is going on? Mom followed with, I can't open the Dropbox link for the family photos anymore. And then finally, Dad, who rarely ever texted, chimed in with, the Wi-Fi went out. Alex, can you check the account? I didn't reply. Not yet. I wanted them to stew a little. They didn't know that every streaming service, every cloud account, every utility bill had been running through my name since 2020, back when Dad got laid off and I quietly offered to help out while they got back on their feet. I never brought it up. I never asked for thanks. But I kept the receipts. And now? I was done playing the background character in a family that only noticed me when something needed fixing. What really lit the fire under them, though, wasn't the Netflix or the power bill. It was the text I sent that night. One message. One photo. The same photo I took at the buffet. No caption. Just the image. It was enough. Nathan replied first. Seriously? Grow up, Alex. Then Mom. Are you really doing this over a birthday card? Rachel added. It was a joke. You're being so dramatic. I didn't answer. I went offline completely. Blocked the group chat, muted their numbers, and went about my day. But that silence? It didn't last long. Because what they hadn't realized yet, what would hit them like a brick the next morning, was that I hadn't just cut off their creature comforts. I'd pulled the plug on something else entirely. By Wednesday morning, I woke up to over 30 missed calls. My phone was vibrating nonstop like it had a personal vendetta. I didn't answer any of them, but I skimmed through the voicemails, each more frantic than the last. Alex, honey, call me back. Your father is trying to get in touch with the bank and nothing's going through. Hey man, I'm not trying to fight or anything, but we're trying to log into the shared drive for the tax stuff. Where is everything? Alex, this is serious. The mortgage payment bounced. Dad says your name is still on the account. What is going on? That one made me pause. They finally realized what they had let slip through their fingers. 3 years ago, when things weren't going so great for the family, when Dad got laid off, when Rachel had to drop out of grad school for a semester, when Nathan lost a chunk of his savings on some can't-miss crypto scheme, I quietly stepped up. I had just landed a major freelance contract with a startup that exploded shortly after. I didn't make a fuss. I didn't demand attention. I just offered to help. I let the bills get rerouted through my accounts. Took on the mortgage to save them from default. Added everyone to my family plan. Covered subscriptions, cloud storage, even the security system. Not because they asked, but because I thought that's what family did. And not once, did anyone say thank you. They treated it like a favor I owed them. The moment I removed myself from that invisible scaffolding, their whole structure started to collapse. And the truth is, I didn't do it to hurt them. I did it to protect myself. But the pain? That came as a side effect. Rachel was the first to switch tactics. She sent me a long, guilt-soaked voice note about how we've all made mistakes, and how she didn't mean anything by the card, and how maybe it's time we all sat down and talked like adults. She even threw in a casual, "I'm really proud of you, by the way," like it was something she just forgot to say for the past 5 years. Then Mom texted again. Short and clipped, "You're punishing your entire family over a misunderstanding. This is not how adults behave." That one stung. Not because I believed it, but because it was so familiar. It was her default whenever someone didn't play along with the family script. Minimize the offense. Shift the blame. Paint the reaction as irrational. So I broke my silence with a single reply. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just done being invisible until you need something. You all made your feelings clear. Now I'm making mine. No one replied for a full day. Then came Nathan. Not a text. Not a voicemail. He showed up. I was in my apartment, small, quiet, mine. I hadn't told them I moved 6 months ago, mostly because I didn't think anyone would care. But I guess he still had the old address on file from when I helped him set up a tax form. I heard the buzzer, ignored it, then knocking, then louder knocking. Eventually, I opened the door, and there he was, my golden boy brother, dressed like he'd come from work, holding a six-pack of whatever he assumed I still drank. "Can we talk?" he asked. I leaned against the doorframe. "You're here now. Go ahead." He sighed, shifted his weight awkwardly. "Look, that dinner wasn't meant to be some attack. It was a joke. We all joke around. You never speak up. So how are we supposed to know when something actually bothers you?" That was the moment. That was the moment I realized he didn't get it. None of them did. They had built a reality where my silence was interpreted as weakness, where my absence of complaint was seen as agreement. You're not supposed to treat someone like garbage and then say, "Well, you didn't say anything." "That's not how decency works," I said. He looked surprised, like the idea had never occurred to him. "Okay, fair. So what do you want?" I let the question hang in the air. What did I want? An apology? No, not really. I didn't think I'd believe it if it came now. Respect? Maybe. But respect that had to be forced wasn't real either. What I wanted was distance. Freedom. A life not tethered to a group of people who only remembered my name when a bill was due. So I said, "I don't want anything." That's the point. Nathan's expression shifted, from confusion to something like contempt. "You're seriously just going to ghost your whole family over a birthday card?" I looked him in the eye and said, "No. I'm finally holding you accountable for 3 years of taking me for granted." That card was just the receipt. He stood there for a second, like he wanted to say something else. Then he left the six-pack on the ground and walked away. I didn't pick it up. And that night, I sat on my couch, finally at peace. Not because I'd gotten revenge. Not because I'd made them suffer. But because, for once, I had chosen myself. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. Not explanations, not money, not silence. But the fallout? That was just beginning. The next morning, I noticed the voicemail from my father. He rarely called me directly. He was more of a group texts and silent nods kind of man. His voice was gravelly and unusually calm in the message, but I could hear the frustration simmering beneath it. "Alex, your mother's upset. Your sister's in tears. You've made your point. Now be a man and fix this. Family isn't something you quit when it's inconvenient. I listened to it twice. That line, be a man and fix this, clanged around in my skull like a warning bell. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even a negotiation. It was a command, the same one I'd grown up with, dressed up in concern but rooted in control. That's how it always was with Dad. He didn't yell. He didn't hit. But he knew how to remind you who paid the bills, even when he wasn't the one doing it. The part that would have made me laugh, if it wasn't so pathetic, was that he genuinely believed I still owed him. After everything, after covering the mortgage for 3 years, handling Mom's overdue hospital bills when her insurance lapsed, paying off Rachel's busted credit card after she accidentally used the wrong one. I had receipts for everything. I'd been the family backbone, and they only realized it when I stepped away. Later that day, Mom sent me a Facebook message. She'd never used it for anything more than cat videos and reposting church event flyers, so I knew it was intentional. The message was short, clipped, like she was trying to hold onto the last bit of moral high ground she had left. We're struggling. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but it's not too late to make things right. Your father says we could still refinance with your name on the paperwork. If we miss another payment, we could lose the house. Please think about your family. That house, the one I grew up in, the one they remodeled with money they didn't have while I was living in a shoebox apartment fresh out of college. The one I kept afloat when Dad's pride wouldn't let him admit we were drowning. That house had never felt like mine, even when I paid for it. And now they wanted me to come back and save it again? I didn't reply. Instead, I started gathering documents. Not because I was going to help them, but because I wanted to protect myself. You see, I'd never officially signed over financial responsibility. The utilities, the streaming services, even the loan I co-signed for Rachel's short-lived bakery dream, they were all still legally linked to me. If they defaulted, I would take the hit. That's what scared me the most. Not their manipulation, not their entitlement, but how quietly and completely they'd woven their lives into mine without giving me any voice. So I made calls, canceled the co-sign, contacted the electric company, and formally removed myself from the account. Locked down my credit profile. Froze every account that wasn't solely mine. I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was shutting the door behind me. It took 2 days. And when the dust settled, I got one final message that stopped me cold. It was from Grandma. She was the only person in the family who ever treated me like I mattered just because I was me. She used to sneak me chocolate when I got grounded for talking back, and she never forgot a single birthday. Even if it was just a card with a hand-drawn doodle and a love you always. But her text hit different. I heard what happened. I wish they saw you the way I do. I don't blame you, Alex. But I do miss you. Please don't let their foolishness harden your heart too much. You're a good man. Don't forget that. I sat with that one for a long time. The next day, I took a drive out to her place. Brought her favorite cinnamon rolls and some tulips. We sat on the porch in silence for a while before she said anything. They don't deserve you, she muttered, sipping her tea. But they'll come crawling soon. Pride always bows to desperation eventually. She wasn't wrong. Because the next day, right after I officially cut off the emergency credit line they'd been using behind my back, I got another knock at my door. But this time, it wasn't Nathan. It was Rachel. She looked different. Not her usual polished self. No makeup, puffy eyes, hoodie and leggings, holding a plastic grocery bag like it was a peace offering. I brought food, she said, her voice scratchy. And I just wanted to talk. Please. I didn't move. Not at first. I kept my hand on the doorframe, studying her like I didn't know her. Because in a lot of ways, I didn't. Not really. But something in her face, genuine, or maybe just really good desperation, made me step aside. She walked in, placed the bag on the kitchen counter, and looked around like she hadn't expected to actually get this far. Alex, we messed up. Okay, we really messed up. I didn't say anything. Just watched her. She looked down. I'm not going to pretend we didn't say awful things. I laughed at the card. I said things I can't take back. I've been selfish, but I didn't know how much you were carrying for all of us. I didn't know because I didn't want to know. It was easier to believe you were just the quiet one with nothing going on. She looked up, her eyes glassy. But you were the one holding everything together. And now it's all falling apart. And just like that, the room fell quiet. She was right. It was falling apart. And I could feel the moment coming. The one where she'd ask me to fix it. But I wasn't the same person who sat quietly at that buffet table last week. I looked at Rachel for a long time before answering. She fidgeted under my silence, chewing on her bottom lip like she was bracing for a punch that hadn't landed yet. I didn't come here to beg, she said quietly, as if to preempt the accusation. I just, I thought maybe if you understood where we were coming from, you'd reconsider. Where you were coming from? I asked. That I'm not worth celebrating until I do something that fits your idea of success? That I'm the guy you all remember when a bill comes due or the Wi-Fi goes out? She winced. I know. It was awful. But we thought you were fine with it. You never pushed back. You never told us anything. You just helped. Like it didn't matter. I finally sat down. My voice was level, but I could feel the pressure behind it, years of unspoken words now fighting their way out. You know what's funny? I said. I used to think it didn't matter either. I used to think it was just easier to say nothing, to play my part. Let Nathan have his trophies. Let you have your spotlight. Let mom and dad pretend I was just drifting through life with no ambition. I never cared about recognition. But you know what finally hit me? It wasn't that I didn't matter. It was that you all agreed I didn't. And you were comfortable with that. She sat down across from me, her shoulders hunched like she was trying to shrink under the weight of it all. I guess we thought you liked being in the background, she said weakly. Like, you were just different. No, I replied. I was made the background. Every time I did something worthwhile, it was brushed aside or rebranded as luck. Every quiet success got drowned out by one of Nathan's promotions or your next big trip. I was the emotional support wall. And when you all built your house on me, you never once looked down to see who was holding it up. I stood and walked to the counter, picking up the bag she brought. Inside was takeout from my favorite Thai place, one I'd mentioned offhand in a text over a year ago. It was the first time anyone in the family had remembered something so specific about me. I appreciate this, I said, setting the bag back down. But a bag of curry doesn't fix years of being treated like I don't count. I know, she said quickly. I know it doesn't. But it's not supposed to fix anything. It's just a start. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. Do you remember when I helped you with your bakery? I asked. Her eyes flickered. Yeah. Do you know how many loans I had to defer to front that $15,000? She swallowed hard. No, I didn't. Of course you didn't. Because you never asked. No one ever did. She looked at me with something like shame, but also, maybe for the first time, real understanding. You want me to come back, I said. To the group chat, to the bills, to the support system you all relied on. But you never once asked me how I was doing. You never once treated me like someone who had his own life, his own responsibilities, his own goals. You want the version of me that says yes and smiles while you laugh in my face. I don't, she said quickly. I swear I don't. I want this version. The one who finally tells us the truth. For a moment, I believed her. But that wasn't enough anymore. I'm not coming back, I said quietly. Her eyes widened. Alex, I'm done being your safety net. I've cut off every shared service. Removed my name from everything. You'll have to figure out your own bills. Rebuild your own credit. I'm not doing it for you. She looked like she wanted to argue, but couldn't. I don't hate you, I continued. I'm not doing this to punish you. But I'm not going to let you keep using me, either. I deserve more than pity and guilt-tripped loyalty. I deserve respect. I respect you, she whispered. Then let me go, I said. Respect me enough to let me walk away. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded slowly. Will you ever come back? She asked. I shook my head. Not until I'm treated like someone you actually want in your life. Not just someone you need. She stood. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the bag of food. She held it out to me. Keep it, she said. Even if you don't want to see us again, just eat something. Please. I took it. That was the only thing I accepted. When she left, I locked the door behind her. And for the first time in years, I felt something lift off my shoulders. The silence in the apartment was no longer hollow, it was peaceful. I spent the next few weeks in near-complete solitude. No group chats. No frantic calls. No obligations pulling me in every direction but my own. I used the time to build my life, something just for me. I accepted a new remote contract with a tech firm in Sweden, paid off the last of my deferred loans, even booked a solo trip to Kyoto, something I'd wanted to do since college. It took them a while to realize I wasn't bluffing. Nathan sent one last message. You've made your point, but don't forget who helped you get where you are. I didn't reply. I just screenshotted the message and archived it in a folder I now called Noise. Mom sent a birthday card the following year. No jokes. Just a simple handwritten note. I'm sorry. I miss you. Love, Mom. I didn't respond to that either. Not out of bitterness. but because I learned something vital. You can forgive people without giving them access to hurt you again. 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail from Grandma. Inside was a small, square photograph of the two of us on her porch, tulips in her lap, cinnamon roll in hand. She'd written on the back in her wobbly handwriting, "They're learning. Slowly. But you don't owe them your peace. Keep going. I'm proud of you." That one, I framed. Now, I live in a sunlit apartment in Stockholm. I work with a brilliant, small team. I walk to a nearby lake every morning with my coffee, and I've started painting again. I still don't make noise about my success. I don't post humble brags or drop subtle hints in group threads, because I no longer need them to see me to feel seen. I see myself, and that's enough. My name is Alex, and I'm 28 years old. I've always believed that hard work pays off. It has to, right? Otherwise, what's the point of spending years grinding, sacrificing sleep, pushing through burnout, and making responsible financial decisions while everyone else is out having fun? That mindset got me through college, through the brutal years of working multiple jobs just to stay afloat, and eventually, to a place where I finally had something to show for it. A place of my own. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I wasn't stressed about rent. I wasn't counting every dollar in my bank account, praying I had enough to cover my bills. My apartment was proof of that. It wasn't some tiny studio or rundown place in a bad neighborhood. It was a beautiful, modern space in a prime location, something I worked for, saved for, and bought with my own money. No loans, no handouts, just me and years of effort finally paying off. My parents, however, saw things differently. Growing up, I was always the independent one, the one who didn't ask for much, who didn't expect anything, who figured things out on his own. My younger brother, Ryan, was the complete opposite. He was the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. My parents spoiled him rotten, handed him everything he wanted on a silver platter, and made excuse after excuse for him whenever he messed up. It didn't matter if he failed his classes, blew through money, or made terrible life choices, there was always some reason why it wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one. If Ryan needed money, I should help him out. If Ryan got into trouble, I should be there for him. If Ryan made a mistake, I should set a good example by fixing it. It was exhausting. No matter how much I accomplished, Ryan was always the priority. It reached a point where I stopped bothering to fight it. I knew how they operated. If Ryan wanted something, he got it, even if it came at my expense. If I wanted something, I had to earn it myself. That was just the way things were, and for the longest time, I accepted it. I figured that once I moved out and built my own life, I wouldn't have to deal with it anymore. I was wrong. A few weeks ago, I got the opportunity of a lifetime and international business trip that would put me in the same room as some of the most influential people in my industry. It wasn't just a big deal. It was the kind of opportunity that could change the entire trajectory of my career. So, of course, I took it. I packed my bags, got on a plane, and spent the next month working harder than I ever had before. It wasn't until I landed back home that I saw the missed calls. Dozens of them. My mom, my dad, even Ryan. I barely had time to process that before my phone started ringing again. It was my mother. Something felt off. My parents never called me this much. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Alex," she said, her voice unusually cheerful. "You're back." I frowned. "Yeah, just landed." "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing," she said quickly, too quickly. "Just wanted to check in. How was the trip?" "It was fine," I said slowly, still trying to figure out why she sounded like she was barely holding back laughter. "Why did you call so many times?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach twist. "Well," she said, dragging the word out, "we have some exciting news." I didn't respond. I already knew I wasn't going to like whatever she was about to say. "We sold your apartment," she finally said, her voice practically bubbling with excitement. For a second, I thought I misheard her. "You what?" I asked, my voice flat. "Sold it," she repeated. "It was such a hassle anyway, wasn't it? Always worrying about maintenance and property taxes, ugh, such a burden. But don't worry, we got a great price for it." My fingers clenched around my phone. My mind was racing, trying to process what I had just heard. "You had no right," I said slowly, keeping my voice calm even though I could feel the anger rising. "Oh, come on, Alex," she said, as if I were being unreasonable. "Ryan needed a car. You know how hard it's been for him without one. How is he supposed to get around? He has places to be, you know." I felt like I was in some kind of twisted dream. You sold my apartment to buy Ryan a car? Not just any car, she corrected. A luxury sports car. He deserves something nice, don't you think? I couldn't even speak. My mother took my silence as an opportunity to keep going. You should have seen his face when we surprised him, she gushed. He was so happy. He even said, "Wow, I can't believe Alex actually did something useful for once." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. You're joking. She laughed, too, but it wasn't a joke. Isn't it sweet? I closed my eyes, taking a slow breath to keep myself from saying something I'd regret. You do realize, I said evenly, that you couldn't have sold my apartment. Silence. It lasted only a second, but it was enough for me to know that, for the first time, my mother wasn't as confident as she had been a moment ago. What do you mean? She asked, her voice suddenly sharper. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I mean, legally, that apartment wasn't yours to sell. Her laughter had stopped completely. Alex, she said, a nervous edge creeping into her voice. What are you talking about? I glanced at my watch. You're about to find out. And with that, I hung up. I sat in silence for a moment, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to demand an explanation that would somehow make this all make sense, but I already knew there wasn't one. They had done it. They had actually done it. Selling my apartment wasn't some misunderstanding. It wasn't some lapse in judgment. No, this was planned. My parents had waited for me to be out of the country, waited until I was thousands of miles away, and then they sold my home out from under me like it was nothing more than an old piece of furniture they didn't need anymore. And for what? A car? For Ryan? I ran a hand through my hair, taking a slow breath. This wasn't just entitlement. This was theft. And the worst part? They were so confident, so smug about it, like they genuinely thought I'd just accept it. That I'd roll over and say, oh well, guess I'll just start over. Not this time. I scrolled through my contacts and called my real estate agent. It rang twice before she picked up. Alex, I was just about to call you, she said, sounding slightly out of breath. I frowned. Why? There was a pause. You haven't seen the emails? I pulled my phone away from my ear and quickly checked my inbox. Sure enough, there were at least a dozen emails from the agency, some automated, some directly from my agent, all marked urgent. My stomach tightened. I've been out of the country, I said slowly. What's going on? Your parents came in with a buyer last week, she said. They insisted you had given them full power of attorney to sell the place. I felt my entire body go cold. They what? They claimed you signed over legal rights to them before you left, she continued, clearly choosing her words carefully. But something about it felt off. The paperwork looked legitimate at first, but when I tried to verify it, the signatures didn't match our previous documents. That's when I started digging. A slow, eerie calm settled over me. And what did you find? She hesitated. Alex, they forged your signature. I closed my eyes, exhaling through my nose. I wanted to call you sooner, she said quickly. But they insisted you were in some remote area with no service. I knew something was wrong, so I held off finalizing anything until I could get confirmation from you directly. But then the buyer started pushing, saying your parents assured him the sale was official. I swallowed. Did the sale go through? No, she said firmly. I stalled as long as I could. But they were getting aggressive. I was actually going to report it tomorrow if I still couldn't reach you. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. They hadn't succeeded. They thought they had. They were probably celebrating right now, thinking they had just pulled off the ultimate scam. I checked my watch. It was late, but I didn't care. Can you meet me at your office in an hour? I asked. Of course, she said without hesitation. I hung up and leaned back against my seat, staring at the ceiling. So they forged my signature, lied to a buyer, almost committed fraud in my name. And they had no idea that they had failed. A slow, dark smile crept onto my face. This was going to be fun. By the time I arrived back in town, I had a plan. I wasn't going to scream or argue. I was going to let them dig their own graves. I met with my real estate agent first thing in the morning. She had already gathered all the forged documents, along with her notes on how my parents had pressured her and the buyer. It was airtight. They were getting desperate, she said, sliding a folder across the table. The buyer was hesitant about the situation, but your parents assured him everything was fine. They even told him you were mentally unfit to manage your own assets, which is why they had control over the sale. I laughed, shaking my head. Unbelievable. She lowered her voice. I also checked with a lawyer. What they did isn't just unethical, it's a crime. If they had succeeded, they could have been charged with fraud and identity theft. My smile didn't waver. They still can. My next stop was the police station. I wasn't sure how this would go, but I wasn't about to let them walk away from this. I sat down with an officer, explained the situation, and handed over the evidence. The officer frowned as he flipped through the documents. This is serious. Forging someone's signature on a legal document, especially to sell property, is a felony. I figured, I said, keeping my tone calm. He nodded. We'll need to bring them in for questioning. Perfect. I didn't call my parents. I didn't warn them. Instead, I waited. It didn't take long. That evening, I got a frantic call from my mother. Alex, she shrieked the moment I answered. What did you do? I smirked. What do you mean? The police were just here. They said we committed fraud. This is ridiculous. We're your parents. You can't do this to us. I didn't do anything, Mom, I said, leaning back in my chair. You did this to yourself. Her voice trembled with barely contained rage. You're our son. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble we're in? Oh, I do, I said. You forged my signature, lied to a real estate agency, almost scammed a buyer. That's not just trouble, Mom. That's a crime. She let out a sharp breath. It was for your brother, Alex. He needed that car. You have everything, and I worked for everything I have. I cut in coldly. And you tried to steal it from me. There was silence. Then, in a much smaller voice, she said, What's going to happen to us? I let the question hang in the air for a moment. I guess you'll find out, I said, and hung up. The next few weeks were chaos. My parents were officially charged with attempted fraud and forgery. They were forced to pay legal fees, and while they avoided jail time, they were hit with a heavy fine. The buyer, furious that he had nearly been scammed, was considering suing them for wasting his time. Ryan, of course, was furious. You ruined everything. He snapped at me when we finally spoke. Mom and Dad were just trying to help me, and now they're in trouble because of you. I stared at him, amazed. Are you seriously blaming me? Yes, he yelled. You could have just let it go. It's not like you don't have money. You could have bought another place. I laughed. Actually laughed. That's not the point, Ryan, I said. They tried to steal from me. They forged my signature. And you're mad at me. You're selfish, he spat. You always have been. I shook my head, suddenly feeling exhausted. No, Ryan. I just don't let people walk all over me. In the end, my parents' little scheme cost them far more than they ever expected. Their reputation took a massive hit. Friends and extended family found out what happened, and suddenly, their golden child wasn't so golden anymore. And me? I walked away with my apartment still in my name, and a newfound understanding of just how little my family actually valued me. But I wasn't mad anymore. No, I was free. And that was worth more than anything they ever could have taken from me. I wish I could say that was the end of it. That my parents, humiliated and legally reprimanded, learned their lesson and moved on. That Ryan, my so-called brother, took a moment to reflect on how completely insane his entitlement had become. But of course, they didn't. Instead, they doubled down. It started with the guilt trips. Mom would call me at random hours, her voice shaking with feigned sorrow. Alex, I don't know how you could do this to us, she whimpered one evening. Your father can't even show his face at work. Everyone's talking about it. Maybe you should have thought about that before committing fraud, I replied dryly. She gasped like I'd struck her. You're so heartless. We're your family. Families forgive each other. You could have handled this privately instead of dragging us through the mud. Like how you handled selling my apartment privately? I shot back. Silence. Then, in a choked whisper, you're going to regret this one day. And she hung up. That was just the beginning. Then came the excuses. Ryan, clearly emboldened by the fact that he had yet to face any consequences for his role in this, decided that the best course of action was to rewrite history. You overreacted, he scoffed when I ran into him at a family event, when I hadn't even wanted to attend. Mom and Dad made a mistake, sure, but did they really deserve all this? I stared at him, completely floored. Ryan, they committed fraud. Yeah, but for me, he said, as if that was supposed to make it better. I took a deep breath. And you don't see how messed up that is? He rolled his eyes. You have money. You weren't even living there most of the time. Why do you care so much? And there it was, the root of it all. Ryan didn't see anything wrong with what they did because, to him, it was never really mine to begin with. No matter what I achieved, no matter how hard I worked, he thought he was entitled to my success simply because we were related. That was when I realized something. This wasn't going to end. Not unless I made sure it did. The final straw came a few weeks later. I was at home, finally enjoying the peace and quiet that came with cutting them off, when I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Hello. A familiar, oily voice slithered through the line. Mr. Daniels, the voice drawled. I frowned. Who is this? A small chuckle. Oh, I believe we've spoken before. I was the interested buyer for your former apartment. I stiffened. This man, the one my parents had nearly sold my home to, should have had no reason to call me. What do you want? I asked, my tone colder now. Well, I was rather disappointed with how everything turned out, he said smoothly. I was promised a deal. A fine property, all wrapped up in a neat little bow. But unfortunately, you got in the way of that. My grip on the phone tightened. Get to the point, I snapped. The man sighed. It appears your dear mother and father have been desperate. They reached out to me again, asking if I'd be interested in a private arrangement to purchase the property off you for an even lower price. A hush-hush deal, if you will. My stomach dropped. They were still trying to sell my apartment. I was speechless for a moment. Then, slowly, I found my voice. And what did you say? The man chuckled again. Oh, I told them I'd think about it. But you see, Mr. Daniels, I don't particularly enjoy being lied to. Your parents assured me they had full control of the property the first time. Now, they're acting as if they can negotiate on your behalf, when I know for a fact they cannot. It's all so sloppy. I was angry. They didn't learn. They weren't sorry. They were just looking for another way to get what they wanted. I'm calling to ask you one simple thing, the man continued, his voice turning sharp. Are you aware of this little scheme? I exhaled slowly, forcing my rage to stay under control. I am now. Good, he said. Because I think it's time someone teaches your family a lesson. I leaned forward. What are you proposing? He chuckled darkly. Oh, I think you'll like it. And that was when I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As the phone call ended, I stood in my living room, my heart pounding with a mix of fury and determination. I had always prided myself on being the rational one, the one who handled business and family matters with level-headedness. But what my parents had done, what they were still trying to do, had crossed a line. They didn't see me as a person anymore. I was just a stepping stone, a tool for their schemes. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not anymore. I immediately set to work, getting in touch with my lawyer and making sure everything was legally sound. I had already filed a report with the police, but I knew that if I didn't act quickly, my parents might actually get away with it. The buyer's call was a wake-up call, and now it was time for me to fight back. I contacted the real estate agency that had first handled the sale of my apartment, explaining everything. The agent who had been involved was shocked, and after hearing my story, she immediately agreed to testify against my parents. We could use her testimony to prove that the whole thing was an elaborate scam. But there was one more thing I needed to do, something that would make sure my parents couldn't weasel their way out of this. I reached out to the media. I knew this wasn't a typical family issue. My parents had committed fraud in broad daylight, trying to sell something that wasn't theirs. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about principle, and I wasn't about to let them slink away without facing the consequences. The media response was swift. Within a few days, my parents' names were plastered across news outlets. They were publicly humiliated. My mother tried to deny everything, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that she had only acted out of love for Ryan. But the damage had been done. The authorities were now fully involved. The buyer, after being contacted by both the police and my lawyer, agreed to press charges. My parents were arrested, but the real kicker came when my mother was found guilty of forging my signature. She had gone to such lengths to manipulate me, and now she was facing not only legal consequences but also the collapse of her carefully crafted image. Ryan, of course, was furious. When I showed up to the courthouse for one of the hearings, he was there, standing with our parents in the middle of a throng of reporters. He looked at me with a venomous glare. "This is your fault," he spat. "You ruined everything. You could have just forgiven them. You could have let it go." I shook my head, no longer even shocked by his level of entitlement. Forgive them for what, Ryan? For trying to steal my home? For treating me like a pawn in their game? No, this was long overdue. He just stared at me, his face red with anger. "You'll regret this. You always do this, push everyone away. One day, you'll wish you had family." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already moved on. The next few months were a whirlwind of court proceedings. My parents faced the full consequences of their actions, fines, probation, and the permanent stain of criminal charges on their record. I made sure to stand my ground, even though every step of it felt like a bitter pill. It wasn't just about the apartment or the money. It was about their betrayal, their complete disregard for me as a person. They thought I would let them get away with it, that I would roll over because I was their son. But they underestimated me. The worst part, however, was how my mother tried to spin everything. After the legal proceedings, she called me one last time, her voice tinged with desperation. Alex, we've learned our lesson. Please, can we just start over? We're family. Don't you want to put this behind us? I let the silence hang for a moment. No, Mom, I said quietly, we're not going to start over. Not this time. And I hung up. That was the final conversation I ever had with them. They never apologized. They never admitted what they did was wrong. But they learned a very valuable lesson about the price of betrayal, and so did I. Looking back on it all, I'm glad I fought for myself. I don't regret it. The years of living under their shadow, under their expectations, were gone. I wasn't their golden child. I was my own person, and I would never let them dictate who I was again. So, what do you think? Reddit? Was I wrong for taking things this far? Should I have just let it go and moved on with my life? Or was this the only way to make them face the consequences? I'd love to hear your thoughts.